wanted to talk about algorithms for a second and how they work with YouTube, because people are asking how they can help. And so just the algorithm is something that's built into YouTube. It's not somebody sitting at YouTube and connecting you with other people, but your habits and what you watch are kept and archived, not by a human being. Again, it's just something that's trained into the computer to recognize. So when you go onto a YouTube channel, even if it's your own YouTube channel, it'll recommend different videos for you based on your watching habit. Because at the end of the day, YouTube is a business, and they just want to figure out how to advertise to different people and then find other like-minded videos. So the best way to help grow a channel like this and to help spread this type of ministry is A, put a like on the video, and B, make a comment. Like if you just say, somebody just said Shabbat Shalom on the last video, that is the best way to help grow this channel and to get this word out there. Now, people may not be aware that Eric, who had all these different teachings on all these different platforms, is doing a weekly teaching. If you could share that and let other people know, that other people you may talk to that liked the whole Eric Bissell paleo Hebrew thing, that's great. That's how you help grow this channel and get the word out there. And there's a lot of us find this super interesting and would want to tune in every single week. So those two things, like and comments, even if it's the type of dog you have in the comment section, we'll take it all. The more comments, like there's 200 people on average.
Just make the comment woof.
Yeah.
Yeah,
on average we get
say comment, right?
We get like 200 to 300 views per video. If every one of you just said something, even the word something is fine. That'll just drive more like-minded people who want to see this information to this channel, so that that they may not even know it's out there. And then just want to open up in prayer.
Go for it.
Father, thank you for Eric being able to join us today. Thank you for keeping him and Karen safe through the storm, and everybody else out there who's dealing with this whole winter wonderlands, Father, and just that you let this word go forward. Even as the enemy rise up against us, Father, we know you're in control, and this is your world. This is your thing. This is your time. This is the time for your 12 tribes to rise again. In Yahushua's name I ask. Amen.
Right, so you got to remember, Yahuwah Eloheinu. Yahweh is our Elohim, and he's the Kana Shemayim Ve'eretz, the maker, thus the possessor of the heavens and the earth. Therefore, he can either allow or disallow, supersede, or prevail upon and over anything that anybody's going to do, which is another interesting thing we'll bump into, hopefully.
All right, I'm going to shut off my camera and my microphone. Mark, if your microphone's already off, but and we'll let Eric go.
Okay, so
you and I were talking about last week on the phone, all the different things that are associated with, like you brought up, what was that Dan Brown movie that they made? I know Dan Brown lives in Exeter. The Da Vinci Code. That was focused around the Holy Grail. And when I hear Holy Grail, I think Monty Python because it's funny.
Right.
Tell them we already got one. It's merely a flesh wound. But Dan Brown actually lives in Exeter, New Hampshire, which is the next town. Like our towns are like separated by a borderline. But so and we were talking about what different things, like if you possess the Holy Grail, what would it give you? And then I started looking up all the different relics around Jesus Christ, and there are 10 major ones that people feel that they must possess. And it's just what would it accomplish us as human beings to physically have these things? This is something that we were talking about, sure. And it seemed to roll into this whole thought process. So you said to make sure that I brought it up in the next time we talked. So,
guys, you have to know also that in the Catholic Church, at least in old times, they used to sell pieces of wood that they said was from the cross. They sold enough wood to build villages, supposedly from that cross.
Well, so it was like the loaves and fishes, it multiplies.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it was.
Well, just to bring people up to speed with the conversation, since you've already got the record on, the concept is, if someone really did have the Holy Grail, which is kind of this archetypical or the maximum of any relic Meaning, if Jesus at the Last Supper drank from this Holy Grail and gave it to his disciples to drink as the establishing of the new covenant, if any one of us were to find or possess that Holy Grail, what would be the benefit? Where is the essence of what it provides that nothing else provides? So if you went through a list of what are the possible benefits, who's to say what's actually appropriated to that object? But if you could say, well, I could live forever, I'd have wisdom, of course, wealth and health. I'd be happy all the time. I would be able to discern great mysteries. I'd be able to bark and have the demons flee, or something. I mean, what else? What else could you possibly
fly? I think you should be able to fly.
It would teleport you around the universe, or fly through outer space, maybe,
and make you invisible. You could walk through things, right? So, you could go through a crowd untouched.
Mark, your mic's off. Mark, we can't hear what you're saying. Go ahead.
I said, or else you could do what they did with the serpent that they used in the wilderness, right? Because they ended up worshiping it, so they had to destroy it. Joshua destroyed it because of what they turned it into a worship idol. So that's what happens with things that people attribute things to when they're just like this thing, a phone, or this cup. They start worshiping the cup rather than the one that created the cup. And that's unfortunate, because that's what human beings do. They need something material to worship. And it's unfortunate, but that's what's going to happen for anybody that finds those things. Whether it's the Shroud of Turin, the Holy Grail, a piece of the cross, they're all going to do the same thing. They're going to venerate the material, which makes it an idol.
You know, and then as I was researching the whole thing and finding the 10 things, I couldn't help but think of the Ark of the Covenant, and just how the Father, if you touched that thing and you weren't authorized to, you were zapped. You're done, over with. There's no second chance. And I just feel like it's a Father saying, "Look, dude, when I say have no image, I mean it. I mean it."
Well, but let's not forget, when it was in the hands of the Philistines, you can bet they touched it.
Well, not necessarily. I heard back in the 70s, I think it was, that somebody set out to make an exact scale model, perfect replica of the Ark of the Covenant. And before they even got it finished, they must have had a bunch of gold and they used the right type of wood. I think it was acacia wood and this and that. It started to generate electricity to the point that if you were to touch it, you'd be electrocuted and die on the spot.
Southern California, the university, they built it.
They did. He said USC, they built it.
That story is archived in in Chariots of the Gods. No, what's that? Ancient Astronauts.
Ancient Astronauts. Jerry's saying that they have archived that story.
That old movie
and somebody actually generated electricity. So if we all had little ones, we could power our houses without having.
Listen, those kind of things I'll believe when I see it.
Well, if that's true, then it wasn't like, Yahuwah said, "Hey, I told you not." Okay, you're out of here. He might have just touched it and boom, electrocuted. It's like, hey, I told you not to touch it. It's just stuff's built in.
It just goes to that conversation we were having before Eric got on about how the things that we consider miracles are actually technology.
Sure.
What they call angel tech now that we couldn't even possibly, even having this conversation online 20 years ago would have been a thought of a miracle.
With pictures.
I was going to grad school in the 80s, and film school, there was no internet. There was no digital stuff like this. It was all analog. It was all video cameras. The black and white video camera just came out with for doing some animation, stop motion, but they had video cameras, but they were all hardwired, plugged in. There was no handheld stuff. But
the unfortunate part
dealing with was even conceived of back just when I was going to school.
The unfortunate part about the technology is it takes our memories away, in a sense, because I can tell you, I used to, I could remember my social insurance number, my rifle number when I was in the Army, all those numbers. When I had my own plumbing business, I could remember the number of every piece of pipe, every elbow, everything else. But then when technology came, first of all, it wasn't the phone, but it was those things you could, your personal manager, you could put it in. So you put phone numbers in. I could remember phone numbers. Now I don't even know my home phone number. I got to go to the phone to call myself, right? Or to call my wife. It's just ridiculous because it takes it doesn't take your memory away, but it takes the exercise of exercising your memory all the time. And you don't need to. We become lazy as far as memory is concerned.
Well, you're right, Mark. The mind is built kind of like a muscle in the sense that you have to exercise the use of a memory, or else you're not going to be able to memorize things. And so the interesting thing is that whatever we do habitually, which becomes to some ritually, not that that's a bad thing, systematically, it establishes the culture. And the interesting thing about the Lord's Prayer, as it's called, the Tefillah Benu, the prayer of our Father, is that, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Well, what does that look like? Well, he told us to rest on Yom HaShabbat and to keep these 7 Moedim, Leviticus 23, as well as a few other places it's talked about. That is what establishes the kingdom. That is what sets up the next thing we're going to do. Oh, yeah, remember, you got to keep this every 7 days. Remember that things are pertinent, significant, important, necessary. It's our responsibility. It's our obligation. But more than all that, the significance of studying this language is I found that it's tied to what's called if/then scenarios. If then.
Yeah.
Words I mentioned about this Jesus Person Pocket Promise book back in the 70s, somebody extracted all the promises and says, if you're in Christ, plead the blood. Every one of these promises are yours. That's the Christian model, the paradigm. Yeah. However, many of those promises are if-then scenarios. Yahuwah says aleph mem. That's the word if, or on the condition of. Aleph mem is also the word for mother or nation or metropolis, or that like a factory where you bring in resources and it puts out product. So it says, if you have this heart, this mind, this behavior, then certain things happen. It's an if-then. And to somebody say, hey, Jesus accomplished it all, everything's done, fulfilled, now I get to capitalize on that. It's like, well, that's a great theory, but is it true? And if it's not true, even though it might have been preached by so-called apostles and prophets and pastors and professors, well, then perhaps we're still responsible for the if-then equation.
Absolutely we are. And if you think of everybody that prays that prayer and says, thy will be done, they don't really know what his will is, like you said. And if you go to Deuteronomy 10, verse 12 and 13, it says, and now, Israel, you'll see what the will of our Heavenly Father is. What does Yahweh your Elohim require of you? But to fear Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in all his ways, which of course is his Torah, and to love him. And he says, if you love me, keep my commandments, to love him and to serve Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, to keep the commandments of Yahweh and his statutes, which I command you this day for your good. I mean, you don't have to look very far. That's just one. There's many other places that say the same thing.
Well, I remember back in the 60s and 70s, okay? So that's high school and then college age. And there was quite some discussion. It's like, what's God's will? And then there was this idea that you could be out of his will, or you could be in his permissive will, or in his perfect will. And it's like, what is that? Is that independently individual for each person, or is there a general, you might call it an overarching theme?
The overarching theme is there's one law.
Well, see, that was never part of it, but to say, hey, listen, well, what is the will? Now you have to translate the word will. And what is that? Well, there's this one word called hepzibah, or chafatz, as het pezadi, which literally means delight or desire, or this is, man, I've got my inner emotions all wrapped up. And then the ba, bet hey, would be in her. So hepzibah, my delight is in her or with her. I remember my dad using that word when my parents were expecting my sister, that he might name her Hepzibah. I was like, well, what's Hepzibah? Oh, it's some Bible word. But anyway, what I'm saying is that the word chafatzi is my delight or my desire. Yahweh uses it all the time. It's like, is that the word will? Kind of, sort of, but there's other words. So the interesting thing which we're going to get to this in a moment, looking up the meanings of all these words. We did this video on Mountain Air 7 YouTube where it was going over the names of the 42 campsites. And I had mentioned what I'd heard years ago. Somebody said, boy, if you could identify or accurately translate the meaning of those 42 words, it tells a story. Well, where do you do that? A bunch of them aren't found in the dictionary or not found in Strong's Concordance. There's pieces of words, you have to figure out how to structure them. And somebody had written a book about that. And when I looked at it, after I learned how to start figuring out these words, I realized I disagreed. I disagreed with this professional author. Well, who's he? I don't know. Well, who's me? I don't know. But the question is, what? It's not, well, who has more credibility? The question is there an accurate mechanism by which to translate these words to extract the full essence of meaning? In other words, is there a protocol, a methodology, a system, an indexing of some kind by which you can look at any word letter for letter and say, that's what that word means? Now, Strong's Concordance or some dictionary like Ernest Klein's dictionary is a wonderful tool, but it doesn't take you all the way there. It takes you as far as those particular authors found necessary to accomplish the purpose of their manuscript, their book. But there's more to it. And then to say, oh, well, there's all these gematria, the number count meanings. It's like, well, there's a certain credibility to that I don't personally ever pay any attention to because I'm spending all my time and energy, you might say, pursuing the understanding or the extrapolating meaning from the letters. And I'd written up a document at one point, at least. At first there was like 22, then I found a few more. There's probably almost 30 different mechanisms that I employ trying to find what the meaning of a word is. That could be provided at some point. We could throw that up on the website. But what I'm saying is that to find out the meaning of this word, any letter is a complex thing. And especially if each letter is complex, then when they interface or interact with other letters before it and after it, or if the letter is in proximity in the natural alphabetic sequence, it's like, well, that has a certain other impact. All these things have to be taken into consideration. So for the sake of doing that, this becomes a rather subjective meaning. Well, that's my opinion. That's my analysis. And some other guy might disagree. Fine, let him disagree. But the question is his standard of measure, or is my standard of measure actually credible? Is it viable? Is it legal? Is it logical? Is it reasonable? Is it what Yahweh has established? And so the interesting thing about this Erectology study is that the key to the whole thing goes back to Daniel 12:4 with the words that are translated until the time. It's ayin dalet hyphen ayin tav. So with the hyphen, it reads as one word. It's actually two words, two-letter words. Ayin dalet, ayin tav. It's translated, ayin dalet means until, or it's some type of witness. It's a progression in time. And the word ayin tav literally just means time. In fact, ayin tav hey means right now. So it's like, what the heck? What does that mean? Well, if ayin means understand, weigh, balance, measure, determine, okay, and dalet is a door. Well, what's a door? A door is a threshold, the place where you have an option, this way or that way, in or out. Entering onto a freeway where you have a triangle yield sign, the red triangle, that's the red dalet, in the Erectology lineup of the letters. And it's like, well, that's a merging, that's a decision, that's something entering or exiting. That's a door concept. Well, who or what's the door? Yeshua claimed to be the door. Well, the Jews don't read the New Testament by and large, so they don't hear or don't believe that Yeshua claimed to be the door. But I'm pinning that tail on that donkey, as it were, saying that door that we're supposed to eyeball, understand, ayin, weigh, measure, balance exactly, and get to. There's a book called Stranger in a Strange Land. The guy coined the term grok, G-R-O-K, and it defies definition other than you really get it at this deepest, otherwise unexplicable essence manner to grok it. If you can grok the door being Yeshua, and it's hyphen or yoked, tied to ironing the tav. Well, what's the tav? Well, the letter tav means a mark or a sign, like a target or something that, a symbol that means something. That's a tav, like a musical note. Oh, that means a sound. And if you put lines, so it orchestrates higher and lower, it's like, well, then you have to have which clef, and is there, anyway, as soon as you put more information, it's like, oh, now I know exactly what note, what harmonic resonance that thing symbolizes. But if it's just a note, it just means, oh, it symbolizes music. So what I'm saying is that every symbol or mark or inscription, a scribing, a graphic that means something is a tav. And so as our minds put together patterns, we establish what we call symbology. Those are tavs. To understand the tav, to iron the tav, then, what is the, you might say, the most significant iconic shape? Well, it's these letters. It's the 22 letters of the alphabet, that word of John 1:1 by which Yahuwah created with some mechanism of utterance, but also then there's more built into it, which is the alphabetic letter sentence, the 22 letters themselves.
So you're saying it's not the Holy Grail?
No, what I'm saying is that for us to grok that the understanding of the tav is the understanding of each letter, and it's yoked or connected to understanding Yeshua is that dalet. And so every letter has to be defined by Yeshua, his reality, his essence, his being. And yet Yeshua is not this guy who did away with the Torah and gave us Sunday because he rose from the dead instead of the Moedim. He's the guy who is defined by the 22 letters of the alphabet. And to understand that is the Holy Grail. Okay, so we had, as per the picture that you have up on the back page there, we had talked about, well, what is a watchman? And there's a few different words for watchman. One is netzar, nun zadi resh. One is tav vav resh, which is where we get the word tour, or to be a tourist, to go on a tour, or where we even get the word in English tire, T-I-R-E, which is what you have on your automobile. So anyway, the point is, there's different places where we can go talking about a watchman, but we're going to just go on a train of thought here. So we're going to move kind of a circuitous route and end up with Samson. But I looked at Numbers 13, where it talks about the 12 spies. Now, the word spy, I believe, is the word tour here, but it's not necessarily what you'd think of as watchman or guard. For what it's worth, Kurt, you might want to look up and put a posted image of the album cover called Argus, A-R-G-U-S, by Wishbone Ash back in the early 70s. It shows a picture of a guy holding a spear, standing there with a cloak and a helmet, and it's a kind of a yellow sky, and it's a pretty cool background. But I remember, great album, but at the time, it's like, what does Argus mean? I had no idea. And for years, I'd look it up. There's a, was it written by Homer? Was it Jason and the Argonauts?
Yeah.
And there's isn't the ship up in the sky called Argos?
Argus? I don't know.
I think. So anyway, the word Argus literally means watchman. In fact, there was a newspaper called the Argonaut, I think it was, somewhere, that means, they're going to watch and tell people what's going on. So anyway, that's a pretty cool cover. What's that?
Argonaut would be your root word to find Argus.
Well, Argonaut, N-A-U-T, like astronaut, is one who does that. So anyway, I'm just making reference. You can pull up that graphic. It's a great album. But anyway, so if you look in Numbers 13, and here we're going to go through just a, you might say, an exercise in wordsmithing. And we're going to end up with Samson, who's in Judges 13, and there's a connection here, which we'll get to. But this will just be a little train ride of watching, touring, viewing what's outside the windows, as it were, as we run through some scripture here of stuff that I've never heard anybody talk about. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't, but I don't know where else you'd find this stuff. Kind of like looking at the names of the 42 campsites. So you go to Numbers 13, and it says there's 12 spies. Every spy is a prince. That word prince is Nun, Shin, Yod, Aleph, Nasiah. Okay, so Nun Shin means to lift up, Nun Shin Aleph, lift up and carry something. So Prince is somebody with a responsibility, but he's also educated, and he's also supposedly, there's also Rosen Resh Zion Nun as a prince. I believe Resh Zion is a secret. And princes are people who are educated and probably have some wealth. They were given a certain amount of responsibility, and hopefully they live up to it. And if they live up to it, that's the word Aleph Mem Nun, which is where we get the word amen, or somebody who's trained, educated, skilled, a craftsman, an artisan. Abraham had amanah, and it is translated that he believed, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. So you could say the word ha-amani, like the word hominy, like hominy and grits. What are you having for breakfast over there? Hominy and grits. Well, hominy, that's just an English word, but you could say ha, amen, e. Yod, the e, the yod suffix means my, or my being. Aleph mem nun, amen means absolutely faithful, responsible, trustworthy, and ha means the. So ha ameni means the responsible one who's taken upon themselves to be what's the word? With fidelity, to be ever faithful, like semper fidelis, that the Latin word that the U.S. Marine Corps uses, always faithful. You can count on me. I'm never going to fail. That was the attitude that should be that of a prince. That was of Avraham. So that's kind of the goal here. So to send in the 12 spies and say, we know if we could trust anybody, we can trust these guys. So yeah, it was their job description to be a prince, but I'm saying there's much more to it than that. So we have to say, even though 10 of the 12 spies were scared to death, they thought, we're going to die if we go into this land, like Yahuwah, our Elohim, has told us to do, though he's prepared the way, he's cleared it out, he's mapped it out, he's sent us in, he's equipped us, and he just took out our enemies from behind us, Pharaoh and all of his greatest elite warriors. We can't trust them to do that to what's in front of us, because these guys are just too scary. The Nephilim, the Anakim, the Raphaim, these big, strong, powerful. And it's like, oh gosh, and their hearts melted. They were faint, and so it's like, well, that's as the story goes. And it's like, if those 10 of those 12 spies had that reaction, and they were the best, toughest, most faithful guys we have, what hope do we have? And they destroyed the heart of the entire nation of 3 million people. Everybody, in fact, Joshua and Caleb, only 2 men out of the 12 out of the 3 million. It's like, what about Moshe and Aaron? But nevertheless, it says only Joshua and Caleb decided to trust Yahuwah. And the entire people wanted to get up and stone these guys to death and hightail it back to Egypt, even though Egypt had just been wasted, ruined 40 years previously, and was being run by a warrior band of Amalekites. It's like, what are your options? Stay in the desert until you all die? It's like, Yahweh will get us in, just like the squeeze he put at the time of the Exodus with Moshe, between the mountains, the ocean, and the Pharaoh. You've got nowhere to go. Either Yahuwah is going to save us or he's not, but there's no option to say, oh no, we're going to go and we'll just put ourselves in servitude to the next door neighbors. That's not an option. So, for him to put us in the future, or even presently, some of us, into that kind of a squeeze, that word squeeze is between a rock and a hard place, is literally the root of the word Egypt, which is Mitzrayim. So the word Zadi Resh, or Zar, is to be a rock, or it could be a fortress in the rocks, a tower, but it's a difficulty, Mitzar. So the word Natsar, Nun Zadi Resh, is very similar. That's the word for watchman, but it's very similar to Mitzar, and then Yod Mem is the plural. So Mem Zadi Resh means a place of strait, straight, a difficulty between a rock and a hard place. It's the word Zar, Zadi Resh, is also the root of the word Caesar and Kaiser, and Czar, Tsar, like Tsar of Russia, or Tsar, which is like a warlord, overlord of people back over in the Asian area, just so people understand. So if Mitzarim is a place of difficulty, a rock and a hard place, straits of distress, narrow squeezing between the place down in Zion National Park called the Narrows, which is gets like barely you could squeeze through, and if a flash flood comes, you're in trouble. But what I'm saying is, what's a Nun Zadi Resh? Natsar, Mem and Nun are related. So it's one who's looking for trouble, or whose job is to determine ahead of time where the trouble is, or you might say, not just to point at it, but to figure out what are we supposed to do to avoid it or get out of it. So what we are doing here by the study is a bit of Natsar Ining, you could say, to throw some Hebrew English to it. Anyway, so the interesting thing, what they did in Numbers 13, is they gave the list of the 12 tribes, though they're not in the birth order. It's just another random order, you might say. And why this order? Well, we're going to get to that. In other words, why were the names of those 42 campsites in that order? You could say, well, let's put them in alphabetical order. Okay, you'll read the definition of the name of the campsites. But if you look at them in that order, maybe it reads as a sentence, a story, a train of thought, a certain consciousness to appropriate, which is what we're going to assume here. So you got the name of the tribe, and then it says the name of the man who was the prince, and then it gives his father's name. And every one of them says Ben, Bet-Nun, which is to be the son of, and then it gives his father's name. For the first one says Reuben, from the tribe of Reuben. There was the guy named Shin Mem Vav Ayin. Well, Vavs and Yods are like the wild cards, so it's Shin Mem Ayin is the word to listen, take heed. Ben Zakur, Zayin Kaf Vav Resh. Take out the Vav and you got Zayin Kaf Resh, which is Zakar, which means to remember, like Zakar Yah, remember Yah. So this is from the tribe of Reuben. You got this guy called Shemoah ben Zakur. Now I'm going to read what all these things mean. They'll put together a sentence. What that means is here, that's Shemoah. And then you could say, remember, that's Zakar. But the word Reuben, Resh Aleph Vav Bet Nun. Well, Resh Aleph means to see or put on exhibition or behold. Bet Nun is a son, S-O-N. So when Leah gave birth to Reuben, she said, wow, hey, look, I've got a son. Hey, how wonderful. Thank you, Yahweh. I've got a son. Now my husband will love me. So the name just means to behold a son, or look, I got a son. But see, we're diagnosing the meaning of the spelling of the word. So I know that Resh Aleph Hey is the suffix you find in Klein's dictionary, but this is Resh Ayin, or Resh Aleph Vav, and Vav is the masculine suffix, Hey is the feminine suffix. But that means to put on exhibition. But Aleph Vav Bet, those three letters right in the middle, is the word Ob, which means ghost. Now they'll tell you it also can mean necromancer or sorcerer. Why are those associated? It's to come back from the dead. Okay, so it's not necessarily about the ghost, or the necromancer is one who calls up the dead, which is what sorcerers or witches like the witch at Endor called up Samuel from the dead when Saul was wanting to get some advice. But it's somebody coming back from the dead. Well, I did this talk up in Montana a couple of years ago, showing this helm sunken on a ship underneath the water, encrusted with coral, and we were looking at, might have been Isaiah 28. But anyway, and it talked about sinking the flagship of Israel. He starts off saying, Ariel, Ariel, you'll be to me as Ariel. And I saw in there that was talking about this same word, like Yahuwah bringing a voice back from the dead. Well, what's the voice being brought back from the dead? You look at Ezekiel 37, and you realize Yahweh promises to bring the whole house of Israel back from the dead, the valley of dry bones. But the resurrection of this Paleo-Hebrew is a voice being brought back from the dead. Yeshua being brought back to life in the place of the Zodi, and specifically Pei Zodi, the mouth opening. That's a restoration like Yeshua coming out of the dead, and Yeshua being the epitome, the quintessence of the language incarnate in human form. For Yeshua to come back from the dead is the same picture as this Paleo-Hebrew understanding of the Ivrit language coming back from the dead. Well, it wasn't dead. It was in a coma, assumed to be dead, lost at sea, you might say, and never regarded to have any consideration ever again, kind of like Latin. Well, they used Latin in law and in medicine and in science, but it's what they call a dead language for common use. I'm just saying that we could go back and analyze every one of these words to this length, but I'm just trying to give you this feeling for how this is done. Kurt, did you have something you wanted to say? No?
I have something.
Okay, looked like you're
No.
came up. Okay, never. So let me go on. So for me to say, look at these 3 words, and it's like, pay attention and remember the tribe of Reuben. He's going to bring it. Hominy is field corn soaked in lye, then dried, ground, turned into cornmeal, made into polenta, and fried in fat. Can't you fry it in olive oil?
And grits is either one or the other.
Only if you're going to be hominy, if you're going to be I'm faithful, you're not going to eat it soaked in fat unless it's buffalo tallow. Anyway, thank you. But anyway, the point is here. Let me go on with this. It's a matter of saying, what are we supposed to? What's Yahweh's will? What are we supposed to listen to? Remember. Oh, that means we have to look back at the past. And Reuben, like a voice of a ghost, one long dead. It's the voice of our own Abba's words that he gave our forefathers way back there in the days of Abraham, and then in the days of Mount Sinai, which was actually 500 years later, and what he said to David, another 500 years, what he was saying in the days of Daniel and Ezekiel, and that's another 500 years, and 2,000 years, what Yeshua said. What I'm saying is it's going back and saying, these are not dead matters. They're just forgotten because they were locked up under the terms of the curse, the 2,730-year curse. So here, remember, put on exhibition, that's Resh Aleph Hey, back from the dead. Well, that's what we're doing with these videos. We are doing exactly Shemoah ben Zakor from the tribe of Reuben by doing these types of videos. Okay, the next one. Simeon, which is Shin Mem Ayin Vav Nun. Well, Vav Nun is the suffix meaning one who's engaged in the doing of what? Shin Mem Ayin, which is the same as Shin Mem Vav Ayin, which is listening and hearing. Okay, and the name was Shaphat Shin Pei Tet. Remember, Mishpat, Mem Shin Pei Tet, is judgment, and so Shaphat is judge. Ben Hori Het Vav Resh Yod. So one who hears, that's Simeon, judge or balance the scales, that's Shaphat, clarify, make evident as a nobleman. So Chor, Het Vav Resh, is a nobleman, one with white hair, which is why the judges and all from England wore those white curly wigs. Or it's a matter of being scholarly. Again, that's what we're doing by these videos. We're making what we have heard, what we were told to hear, putting it in scales of balance, finding out what it really means, what's really pertinent, and talking about it and making it clear and evident, provable by the nature of the words themselves, letter by letter. The third one, of the tribe of Yehuda, Caleb ben Yod Pei Nun He, Ifna. Okay, Yehuda means hodu, or broadcast, praise, or confession. And then Caleb is fully heart, enthusiast, look, regard, or cause to turn, like taking an old engine and trying to turn the thing over that hasn't been going for, again, what we're doing with the language. And it also then means Yod Pei Nun He, he freed himself, disengaged, evacuated abominations. In other words, stop doing what Yahweh said not to do. It's kind of like if you go on a body cleanse to purge yourself from things you might have eaten that he said are going to harm you. Don't eat them. Okay, well then how do you purge? You go through some sort of a cleanse or a fast with different kinds of herbs or drinks. Water fast or whatever it might be. Anyway, next one. The whole idea of saying, why should we keep the Moedim? Because he said to. So how do you wean yourself off of Christmas, Easter, Halloween, Valentine's? It's like start keeping Yahuwah's Moedim. Evacuate the abominations from your own being with enthusiasm, confessing that we've all inherited lies and done contrary to the terms of the covenant, but then broadcast and encourage each other to participate. Again, that's what we're doing. Next one, Issachar, from the tribe of Issachar, was Yod Gimel Aleph Lamed ben Yod Vav Samik Pei. So that's Igal ben Yosef. Okay, reward, remuneration, wages paid, like when you spend a bunch of money to buy alcohol and you want to drink, it's because you want to get drunk. So literally that's what the word Issachar has to do with, is that, or Sakar means you get what you paid for. Well, that's like the word Debar. It's that what comes later, the pasture or the plague. It's the result and the reward of behavior. It's the if-then scenario. The defiled is redeemed, cleansed, made good. That's again the balancing of scales. He will, this is what the word Yosef means, he will accumulate, add, affix, or join, or be given to eat. The next word, Ephraim, which is afar, can mean ashes, dust, cosmetics, mask, or aristocracy. And then the word is Hevav Shin Ayin, which is the root of the word Yeshua, Yod Hevav Shin Ayin, but this is Hosha, which is where you get the word Hosea, Ben Nun, son of Nun. That's Joshua, son of Nun. And the word Nun there basically means it's personal. So this basically means fertile, prolific, vitality, delivered, helped. And either increase or decrease, either generate or degenerate. That's the meaning of the word Nun. From the word Benjamin, one who sleeps, is the word Neem. So it means son of my right hand, but Bet means in the condition of, Nun is the one who is doing, and Nun Yod Mem means one who sleeps. So that's somebody who's been in a coma, or that's somebody who you might say has been, or something like the language which has been dormant, like Yeshua been in the grave, like Lisa Lazarus is only sleeping, though he was dead. But again, it's like, how do you read this word? Oh, son of my right hand, that's Benjamin. It's like there's this concept of somebody or something has been out of the game. So then it's Pelamed Tet Yod, where we get the word flit or fugitive, Plati, Ben Resh Pei Vav Aleph. Well, Resh Pei, where you get the word Rapha, is the healer. So you could say right hand, at my right hand is escape, rescue, discharge, or vomit. But you also get the word palatine from Pelamed Tet, which is Latin, where you get a palatial, wide open, and then you get the word for heal or weaken, feeble, or palatial. So it's like, again, we've got this alternative thing. The word Zebulon, Gimel Dalet Yod Aleph Lamed, Gideal Ben Samik Vav Dalet Yod, that's Sodi. So Zebulon, it's Zebulun, Zeppelin. Well, that's like the band Led Zeppelin, but the word Zeppelin is this dirigible, this floating up in the air, this balloon, and it literally means elevation, lofty, and a place to throw things from high up, like a bomber, a war bomber will throw down things to people down below. So the word Zeppelin, I think, was named after the guy who invented that thing, but it just happens to be the exact same word in Hebrew. The German dirigible Graf Zeppelin is the one that blew up, I believe, in was it Kansas, Missouri? Anyway, the word giddy is the word for kid goat, growing, and then Iyal is growing into honor, but it also, Gad, Gimel Dalet, means to having its horns cut off or something ruined. But then the word Sodi is my secret. Sod, Samik Vav Dalet, my secret. Okay, so here you have this kid goat that's giddy. That's why we say, oh, he's giddy, he's jumping all around. That's like a goat. So even our English picture in words is based on the ancient Hebrew. So there's this elevation or this lofty, where a kid goat who had his horns cut off and his, as you might say, brought to ruin, there's a secret of how this kid goat will somehow be elevated. The next one, Yosef, and from the tribe of Yosef, specifically Manasseh or Manasseh, it's Gimel Dalet Yod, giddy, same basic word, Ben Susi, Samik Vav Samik Yud, where the word Samik Vav Samik is horse, so my horse. My goat, the son of my horse. Maybe these guys loved animals, this family. But basically, Yosef from the tribe of Manasseh, he will gather it in and carry the debt. The creditor will forgive and then forget that the debtor still owed him. My good fortune. The word horsey is also where you get the picture of a fluttering flag or something very conspicuous, like blinking lights, like, whoa, like a fluttering moth, which is to say it's legendary. So also the word giddy, which is like a kid goat jumping around, is where if you put the letter hey, which is a prefix in front of it, you get the word Hagad or Haggadah, which is to tell a legendary story, which is like, boy, that's a story of the ancient days of yore, like Samson, for example. But the fact is that this word previously was Sodi, my secret. Well, who had a secret? What came to mind was Samson. That's the train of thought. Well, we're going to talk about Samson in a moment, just bouncing off that word Sodi. Okay, the next one, from the tribe of Dan, you get Ayin Mem Yod Aleph Lamed, Amiel, son of or ben of Gemali, Gimel Mem Lamed Yod. Well, Dan means judge or choose, like a referee. Make the call, Dalet Nun. Well, Dalet is a door, so you're standing at a place of decision, and Nun is this action, so decide. So the word Dan or Dean, Bet Din, house of judges or house of deciders, some kind of a court. So a shofet is a judge, but also Dalet Nun, Dan is a judge. But it's one who has to choose. We all have to choose. Moshe said, I put before you life and death, blessing and cursing. I encourage you to choose life, but you as an individual have to choose for yourself whether you want to be Yahuwah's Israel, his people, or not. You want to be in covenant with him or not? You want to be Hamani or not? So then, Ami, Ayin Mem, means my people, my people of El. I want to be the people of El. That's what this word means. Son of Gimel. Well, Gimel, that's where we get the word camel, but it also means to be weaned off of milk. It's the word for ripe, whole, complete, large, like a windfall or like the gable end of a house where it goes up looking like a camel's hump. So again, you must choose for yourself. Do you want to be the people of El who are weaned off milk to get into what? Stuff like this? Maybe. Asher, next one, Asher, tribe of Asher, and it would be Samik Tav Vav Resh, Satur, Ben of Mem Yod Kaf Aleph Lamed, Mikael. That's the word Michael. So Asher, praiseworthy, blessed, valid, straight. And then Samik Tav Vav Resh, Satur, is demolished, destroyed, disheveled. Then, but Mikael means he will prevail, contain it all, to have ability or capability. So again, is this two options, or is this to say even if you come to ruin, Yahweh will turn it around? That's a promise. That's part of the covenant. Next one, there's just two more. Naphtali, that's to subtle, twisted, tortured wrestling like a serpentine shape. Remember, Leah said, I have wrestled with my sister and come up with some schemes, sacred schemes. So that's the word Naphtali. Then Nun Chet Bet Nachav Ben Vav Pe Samik Yod, Ben of Ufasi. Okay, so subtle, twisted, torture, wrestling conditions, confused distortions, hidden, tucked into the heart. That's Nun Chet Bet. Chav Chet Bet Bet is held in your bosom. Chababi. That's where you get the word. Hey, baby. Chababa. Chet Bet Bet. Tucked into the heart, bosom, led to sanctuary is the word for Pei Samik Yod. And then the last one, the tribe of Gad, there's no tribe for Levi. It's Gimel Aleph Vav Aleph Lamed Ben Mem Kaf Yod. So Gimel Dalet, basically word good or good God, good luck. It will manifest blatant. That's Gimel Aleph Vav Aleph Lamed. The Aleph Vav Lamed is just these, almost like these wild cards stuck in between Gimel Lamed. So there's one of those words where Gimel and Lamed is the root part of the word. My hand, maki, it means to hit or strike with my hand, but it's almost like the word kaf yod, where Yahweh holds up his hand, swears by his own identity that that's what it's going to be. So the word spelled kaf yod, kaf is a prefix, can mean like or as, yod is a suffix, mean my, myself, my own. I own this. He holds up his hand, he says, and it's translated for thus, so, because, when, while, if, in which case. But it's basically him saying, I said it, that's what it is. So in Maka, Mem Kaf Yod, Maki, boom, is to be smacked. So my hand, I promise, majestic, boastful exaltation, or smackdown, defeated. Okay, so to read these through, and these are the 12 tribes, the 12 spies, and the names of the fathers. Now consider this being regarding the study of the language. Or you could say, well, what if it's not the study of the language, it's something else? And it's like, well, okay, you figure that out. I'm kind of focused on this being what the language is about, because that's what it sounds like. Here, remember, put on exhibition as it comes back from the dead, just like a picture of Yeshua is the language and is the house of Israel itself. The whole house of Israel, as of per Ezekiel 37. One who hears should then judge or balance the scales, clarify and make evident as a scholarly nobleman, broadcast praise and confession, enthusiastically cause to turn, to start this thing up that's been sitting dormant for years, free yourself, become disengaged and evacuated of the previous abominations which we've all ingested. There is a reward, the remuneration, there's wages paid The defiled will be redeemed, cleansed, made good at the value, as Yahweh said, and that he will accumulate or be given to eat. Whatever we purge ourselves of will be replaced with the good stuff that Yahweh has given us to eat. Fertile, prolific vitality delivered and helped, and it can be either for increase or decrease depending on how we manage it, how we attend to what Yahweh said. At the right hand, escape, rescue, and discharge. So I choose to believe that no matter what the bad guys have in plan, no matter how many laws, vaccines that they threaten us with, in Yahuwah our Elohim is escape and rescue. That's to flit away like a bird out of the trap. He promises to heal, but there's also the possibility of weakening and feebleness. The word be still and know that I am Elohim, actually the word to be still literally is to be weak and feeble. So I could say, well, if he doesn't heal, or if we don't play into his healing, we'll be weak and feeble, like the 10 spies were, then only Joshua and Caleb believed in the strength. But the way to trust him is to completely let go of our own devices and our own energies and say, I can't do it, it's up to him. That is the word to be still, which is that word that means weak and feeble, which is a similar to, it's not the word used, but it's similar to resh pay. Actually, I think it is that word. That's in, what's it, Psalms 41, I think it is. Anyway, distraction. I have it written down on another page here. The next one, elevation lofty. He promises to raise us up, and even though our horns had been cut, his secret, playing into Samson, we'll get to in a minute, is that the next one, he will gather it in and carry the debt. My good fortune. It's like, why was Yeshua put to death? It had something to do with this secret plan to turn everything around, though he didn't elaborate on how it was going to work. But we can read in the alphabetic sequence a lot there, which we've done previously. So now choose, be my people, weaned off milk, and grow into this expectation of what it means to be in Yahuwah's mind and heart and vision and prophecy. We talked about before, what was it? Daniel 9:27, according to vision and prophecy. Whose vision and prophecy? Yahuwah's. He has a vision of who we are and what we're going to be doing, and he prophesied that it would be such. Well, where is it? It's right here that we would be weaned off milk and grow into or act into being the Gable, the Gimel Bet Lamed, as it were. The praiseworthy, blessed, straight, he will prevail, contain it all. And everything else will be demolished and destroyed and disheveled, or in spite of its demolishing, Yahweh promises to pull through and make his vision manifest. The subtle, twisted, tortured, wrestling contortions, confused, hidden. So even though there's all these disagreements and people trying to figure out what's the truth, what are we supposed to do? Again, Argus, the Natsar, we're watching for the truth. What's the truth? Did Elohim change the rules or not? I've heard it said from the pulpit, God doesn't change, but he changed the rules. I disagree. I think that when he says repeatedly and forcefully, that's the ta'odah, which is tav, ayin, vav, dalet, hey, ta'odah, again and again, repeatedly, forcefully, and that word ayin, vav, dalet means still, continually, yet, to persist. And because that's the word translated testimony, I choose to say it is the testimony, the ayin dalet, the ayin vav dalet, is to say it persists still, regardless of all the rant, woof, woof, bark, bark against it, saying that it's been done away with. Okay, and then the last one, good. It will manifest, blatant. Yahweh raises his hand and says, I promise, majestic, boastful exaltation. That needs to be our consciousness of reality. And the keeping of the festivals was then given to us as a tool or device to establish the consciousness. So we could say, well, he did away with the ceremonial law. It has nothing to do with that. He established the kingdom of heaven to be in our actions of remembering and listening. And remember, we talked about when Pesach comes around and the children say, why are we eating these funny crackers? that have stripes and holes in them for a week? And he says, tell the story. The answer is to tell the story. So you need to remember the story. You need to tell the story as you're keeping the instruction to eat unleavened bread for a week. And Yahweh said, and so the Torah will be in your mouth. Well, there's something about the Torah being this unleavened bread. There's something about Yeshua being striped and pierced and his body broken, though not a bone. And there's something about us telling the story, the Torah is in our mouth. It's a play on words. Everything's a play on words. Okay, so this thing about Samson, everything being a play on words. If you go to Judges 13, okay, I heard it said once, radio sermon I think I was listening to, the Christian minister, and I hadn't really looked at Samson before. I mentioned this back in the Erectology class one of the weeks, back in 2011. But the pastor said something about Samson is kind of a sophomoric punk. He's some teenage guy that just thinks it's real funny to make stupid jokes, but they're not funny, they're not jokes. And he torments, he hurts people. He's a bit of a thug. He's kind of a not real smart. And when I say sophomoric, that's a term that's, thinks things are funny that are kind of lewd and kind of crude and kind of practical joke. It's like, really? Was that kind of the temperament of Samson? Well, why does he say that? You look at Judges 15:16, and Samson kills 1,000 guys with the jawbone of an axe. And he says, with the jawbone of a donkey, heap upon heaps, I have struck down 1,000 men. Okay, so what? What he said in Hebrew is, Belachi ha chamor team. He's using the word chamor 3 times. That word chamor means, these are all the meanings of the word chamor. Look it up in the dictionary. Het mem vav resh, or just even het mem resh. It means foolish, asinine, ass or donkey, the type of animal. It means to drive an ass, which is you take a stick or a whip or the carrot and the stick, the proverbial, you lead them or you push them. It means to heap up, make heavy, foam up, aggravate, become serious or severe. It's a picture of wine that bubbles up it's almost like kombucha.
Fermenting.
It's fermenting, kind of like leavened bread, and it's swelling. It means to materialize,
It's unleavened. It's leavened.
or to be corporeal, of tangible substance, and it's to be red. Well, some asphalt is red, and so there's this. So the word chamor means all that. So why would Shimshon say chamor team? It's simply translated heap upon heaps. I have struck down. It's like, wait a second. So I sat there and I tried to say, if I tried to read into it all these possible definitions and plug it back in, including the word belachi, bet lamed het yod. Well, het yod is life. Bet is in the condition of. Lamed is according to, but bet lamed means without, but it's also the words for jawbone, because lachi means moist, fresh, vigorous, or new. It also means humor, like something that's funny, or pus, something that oozes, infection. The word bet lamed het means to flicker or loll the tongue as if one was panting. That's lamed het tav. And it's like, then you could look at, say, lamed het nun, to sing or chant or compose a melody. So you're singing, you're pondering. And so I believe Samson's doing this, and I'll prove it in a moment. And another thing he says, but so lamed het yod mem, able to fight. Lamed het yod mem, cheers, have a drink. Lamed het mem, bread battle. So if I take all this and put it together, this is what I come up with that Samson was saying when he was come up with a little ditty. Now this is my version of humor. How can the dry become moist? He's posing a riddle. Samson was a riddler. The incapable become able to fight. How can a dead mouth sing? A jackass expound profundity. The jawbone of a donkey, that which has no life, is brought to life, materialized. The asinine ass is assified, as the ass has asked for. The fools want to aggravate the grievance, want to foam up the severity. Is it because they want to heap up heaps, want to drive this thing into a major issue, multiply by 1,000? Okay, here is their wish. 1,000 asses assified, red with blood. Hope you enjoy your dumbass wine party. Cheers, drink up. Now that's what Samson was saying by saying, Belachi ha chamor, chamor chamortim. And all I'm trying to do here is pull out every possible way to take the meaning of the word chamor and put it in the same structure of the sentence of Samson's using 4 words. Is that what Samson was doing?